The mansion stood tall on the highest hill of the alien city. Its silver walls shone under the twin suns. Servants moved through the long halls in silence, their eyes lowered. No laughter, no music. The house was full of treasures, shining stones, golden fabrics, and endless food. Yet inside it felt empty. At the center of this silence lived Lady Serana, the wealthy alien mother. She was known across the city for her riches, her power, and her cold beauty. People bowed when she passed. No one dared to speak against her. But in her heart she carried a wound deeper than any blade could cut. Her only daughter, Lyra, was paralyzed from birth. The girl could not walk, could not run, and could only watch the world from her bed near the tall windows every healer had come. Some carried glowing staffs, others brought humming machines. All promised hope, and all left in failure. Lady Serana paid them with jewels and gold. But their words were always the same. There is nothing more we can do. The mother never cried in front of others, but at night she sat beside her daughter's bed staring at her fragile legs. She whispered promises she could not keep. One day, you will walk, my child. The mansion's silence grew heavier. With every passing year, servants whispered in corners. Some pitied the child, others feared her, believing she was cursed. Lady Serana heard their words but ignored them. She ordered them to keep quiet. She would not allow pity in her house. Her pride was strong, her face was stone, but her heart broke each time she saw her daughter's sad smile. Lyra was gentle, her eyes were bright like starlight. She loved stories more than jewels. She asked the servants to tell her tales of the world outside, of markets filled with colors, of rivers that sang, and of humans who walked among the stars. When she laughed at these stories, the mansion felt alive for a moment, but soon the silence always returned. One evening, Lady Serana stood on her balcony. The city lights sparkled below. She heard a group of traders passing by on the road. Their voices carried up to her, and among their words was something strange. They spoke of a human man who had arrived in the lower markets. He was poor, dressed in dust and simple cloth, but people whispered he had done something no healer could. Lady Serana's brow tightened. Humans were rare here. Most were treated as outsiders, weak and simple. The idea that one of them could heal was laughable. She turned away with pride, yet the words stayed in her mind. They echoed like a bell in the silence of her mansion. That night, as she sat beside her daughter, Lyra looked at her with wide eyes. "Mother, I heard the servants talking. They said, 'A human is here, can we let him try?'" Her voice was soft, but it struck Serana like a blade. Serana shook her head. "Humans are simple, my child. They know nothing of our kind. How could such a man succeed when the greatest healers failed?" But Lyra's eyes did not lower. For the first time, the child's voice carried strength. "No healer ever looked at me as more than a patient. They see me as broken, not as me. Maybe a human will see me differently." Serana froze. The words cut deep. She thought of all the healers, how they spoke to her, never to her daughter. They gave promises to the mother, never hope to the child. Could her daughter be right? The silence in the mansion that night felt heavier than ever. Serana walked through the long empty halls, past paintings and statues, yet none of her treasures shone bright enough to erase the image of her daughter's eyes, hopeful and pleading at dawn. She stood once more on the balcony, looking out over the city. Her pride screamed at her to forget, to hold her head high, to never bow to something as low as a human. But in her chest, a softer voice whispered, "What if he is the one?" Lady Serana's hand trembled as she gripped the railing. For the first time in years, she felt fear. Not fear of losing her status, but fear of hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope could break her heart worse than silence ever had. Still, when she turned to walk back into the mansion, her steps slowed. The halls were silent, the servants bowed, the treasures glittered, but none of it mattered. At the end of the hall, her daughter's small voice called out, "Mother?" Serana stopped. She looked into Lyra's bright, waiting eyes. The mansion around them seemed to vanish in that moment. All the wealth, all the pride, all the silence. It was only a mother and her daughter. and in Serana's chest, the whisper of hope refused to die. The lower markets of the alien city were a world far different from Lady Serana's mansion. Here the streets were narrow, filled with smoke from cooking fires. Merchants shouted prices and children ran barefoot through the dust. It was noisy, colorful, and alive. Yet in this chaos one figure stood out, the human man. His name whispered among the traders as Elias moved quietly through the crowd. He wore a simple cloak that had lost its color to the sun. His boots were worn, his hands rough from years of work. Nothing about him looked powerful. He was not tall compared to the aliens around him. He carried no weapons, no shining staff, no glowing machine. Yet his eyes, calm and steady, seemed to see everything. Some laughed at him. Aliens passing by muttered, "Why is this human here? He should return to the dirt world he came from." Others ignored him, treating him as invisible, but one merchant watched carefully. He had seen Elias place his hand on a broken animal. Earlier the beast, weak and near death, had stood again, shaking but alive. The merchant swore it was no trick. By the time Lady Serana's servant reached the market, the whispers had grown. The human has strange skills. He heals with no tools. He is dangerous, or he is blessed. The servant hesitated to approach, but the memory of his mistress's sharp eyes pushed him forward. He stepped before Elias and said in a low voice, "The Lady of the Hills summons you." Elias lifted his gaze. He did not bow. He did not look surprised. He only nodded once and followed. His calmness unsettled the servant. Most would tremble at the thought of entering Serana's mansion, but this man walked as if called by an equal. When word reached Lady Serana, her pride rose again. She stood in her high hall, waiting. Her golden robe shimmered under the light of hanging crystals. Around her, servants lined the walls, their faces tense. She told herself she would not show weakness. If the human was a fraud, she would throw him out. If he dared mock her family, she would crush him. The heavy doors opened, and Elias entered. He did not kneel. He did not even stop to admire the treasures. His steps were steady, his eyes fixed not on Lady Serana, but on the small figure sitting near the window, Lyra. The mother's lips tightened. No healer had ever looked at her daughter first. They always bowed to Serana, praising her wealth before even glancing at the girl. But this human's eyes softened the moment he saw Lyra, as though she was the only soul in the room. "Are you the one they whisper about?" Lady Serana asked, her voice sharp. Elias turned his gaze to her. His words were simple. "I am only a man." Then he looked back at the child. "But I will try." The servants gasped at his boldness. No one spoke so plainly to the Lady of the Hill. Yet Serana felt a strange heat in her chest. Anger and curiosity burned together. She wanted to demand respect, but something in his calm voice held her back. Lyra's small hands gripped the edge of her chair. Her wide eyes shone with hope. "Will you help me?" she asked. Her voice was fragile yet stronger than ever before. Elias walked closer. He did not touch her yet. He crouched low, so his face was level with hers. "If you believe you can stand, then together we will try." The silence in the hall grew heavy. Every servant leaned forward, their breaths held. Lady Serana's heart pounded, though she kept her face still. She hated that she felt afraid. Afraid not of failure, but of hope. "Enough!" Serana snapped, trying to reclaim her control. "You are only a man. If you fail, you will leave and never return. Do you understand?" Elias looked at her. His eyes were calm, not challenging. "If I fail, I will leave. But if she succeeds, you must promise not to cage her spirit with fear again." The mother froze. His words cut sharper than any blade. She had never thought of it like that. Had her pride been a cage for her daughter all this time? Her hands trembled slightly, unseen within her sleeves. She gave a small nod, though her voice was steady. "We shall see." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but they were not of sadness. They were of hope. For the first time in her young life, someone had spoken to her as if she mattered. Not as a patient, not as a curse, but as a person. Elias extended his hand toward her, not touching yet, only waiting. "Are you ready, little one?" The girl reached out with shaking fingers, her hand rested in his rough palm. The moment was quiet, powerful. It felt as though the mansion itself was holding its breath. Lady Serana, proud and cold, felt her throat tighten. She told herself it was foolish, she told herself it was weakness, but in her heart she knew something had changed. Something unstoppable had begun. The great hall of the mansion stood in silence. The human's words still echoed in Lady Serana's mind. She sat on her high chair, her golden robe falling like waves around her. Her face was calm, but inside her heart battled itself. Pride on one side, fear on the other. Her servants lingered along the walls, their eyes darting between their mistress and the human. Some whispered that the lady was mad to allow this. Others whispered that perhaps the human was dangerous, but none dared speak aloud. The air itself felt heavy. Lady Serana studied Elias. He was nothing like the healer she had known. They had come with glowing tools, shining robes, and loud promises. He had come with nothing but calm eyes and empty hands. Could such a man really do more than all the wealth in the galaxy had bought? She wanted to laugh at the thought, yet something in her chest held her still. Her daughter Lyra clung to the human's hand, her eyes bright and full of trust. That trust cut deep into Serana's pride. How could her daughter give her heart so quickly to a stranger, a human, when her own mother had given everything and failed? "Leave us," Serana ordered suddenly. Her voice rang like iron across the hall. The servants bowed and left, their footsteps fading until the great doors closed. Now only Serana, her daughter, and the human remained. Serana rose from her seat and walked closer. Her footsteps echoed. She stopped a short distance away, folding her arms. "You are bold, human," she said. "You speak as if my wealth means nothing. Do you not fear me?" Elias looked at her without flinching. "I respect you, lady, but I do not fear you. Fear will not help your daughter. She needs something else." The words stung. Serana's lips pressed tight. No one had ever dared speak so plain to her, not even nobles of her rank. Yet this human stood firm as though her power was nothing. Her pride roared inside her mind. It told her to throw him out, to remind him that he was only dust compared to her jewels. But her heart whispered softer words. She remembered every night. She had sat beside her daughter's bed, whispering promises she could not keep. Could it be that this man, simple and poor, might do what all the powerful could not? Serana's doubt grew like a shadow. If she allowed him and he failed, her name would be mocked, her enemies would laugh at the Lady of the Hill who turned to a human. Yet if she refused and he truly could help, then she would be the one who chained her daughter forever. The weight of choice pressed heavy. She turned her eyes to her daughter. Lyra's gaze was fixed on Elias, trust shining in every tearful blink. That gaze broke Serana's defenses more than any weapon could. "You truly believe he can help you?" Serana asked her daughter. Her voice softened without meaning to. "Yes, mother," Lyra whispered. "Because he looks at me. Not at you. Not at your gold. He sees me." Serana's breath caught. She realized it was true. Every healer had spoken. To her, never to Lyra. They had looked at her riches, her status, her pride. But none had spoken to the child who suffered most. Her hands trembled slightly within her sleeves. "If you are wrong, child," Serana said with effort, "your heart will break." "Then let it be mine," Lyra answered softly. "Not yours." Serana turned away, her eyes burned, but no tears fell. She would not show weakness, not yet. She faced Elias again. "Do what you came for, but remember this. If you harm her, if you play with her hope, I will destroy you. Do you understand? Do you?" Elias bowed his head slightly, not in fear, but in respect. "I understand, lady. I have nothing to gain from lies. Only truth will matter here." Serana stepped back. She could not watch too closely. Her pride demanded distance, but she could not leave either. Her heart was chained to that moment. Elias knelt before Lyra once more, his voice calm. "We will start with the smallest step. Believe that you can, and you will. He placed his hand gently on her fragile leg. His touch was steady, warm. Lyra gasped softly. Her leg shivered, a movement so small it might have been missed. But Serana saw it. Her heart froze. The hall felt as though it had stopped breathing. The girl's fingers dug into Elias's hand. Her lips trembled. "I felt it," she whispered. Serana's pride cracked like glass. She had seen her daughter's leg move, even if only for a moment. It was more than any healer had achieved, more than any machine had given. Her throat tightened, but she forced her face still. Doubt still gnawed at her. Was it real or only her desperate hope playing tricks? She did not know. But in her chest, the cage of pride was weakening. One thought, dangerous and bright, burned through her doubt. What if this human is the answer? The hall was silent. Lyra's small gasp still hung in the air. Her leg had moved, even if only a tremble, and every servant who secretly watched from behind the tall doors felt the shock run through them. Lady Serana stood stiff, her face hard, but her heart raced faster than a storm. Elias did not smile or boast. He did not turn to Serana as if demanding praise. He kept his eyes only on the girl. "Again," he whispered gently. His voice was low, steady, like the calm flow of water. "Breathe, and think of standing. Think of walking. Your body will follow where your spirit leads." Lyra closed her eyes. Her little hands clutched the arms of her chair. Her lips moved without sound. She was imagining it, her legs holding her feet stepping forward, something no machine or healer had ever made her believe. Elias placed his palm against her knee. His hand was rough, scarred, but warm. Not cold like the metal tools of alien doctors. His warmth spread not as magic, but as comfort. The girl's breathing slowed and her foot twitched again, clearer this time. Serana's chest tightened. For years she had prayed for such a sight. For years she had drowned healers in gold, demanding miracles that never came. And now, before her eyes, a human with nothing had given more than all her wealth had ever bought. She wanted to cry out, to demand proof, but her voice failed her. Pride held her mouth closed, but tears burned at the edge of her eyes. She gripped her sleeves tightly to stop her hands from shaking. Elias looked at the girl with patient eyes. "It will not be easy, little one," he said. "Your legs have slept too long. They will wake, slowly, but they will wake, if you do not give up." Lyra opened her eyes, shimmering with tears. "I want to walk," she whispered. "I want to run." "You will," Elias promised softly. His tone carried no grandness, no arrogance, only certainty. It was a promise given not to impress, but to believe. The mother turned sharply, walking toward the balcony. She could not bear the storm inside her chest. She looked out over the shining city below. Her pride fought like a beast, screaming that this was dangerous, screaming that hope was poison. Yet another voice whispered back, the voice of her daughter's heart, the voice she had ignored for too long. Behind her, the sound of wood scraped. Lyra was shifting in her chair, pushing herself with Elias's guidance. One servant gasped. Serana turned quickly, her eyes wide. Lyra's body shook with effort. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Elias knelt beside her, steadying her but never lifting her weight fully. "One step," he said calmly. "Just one. Hold my hand and try." The girl's thin legs trembled, her toes pressed against the marble floor. Her fingers wrapped tight around Elias's rough palm, and then, her knee bent, her heel lifted. For the first time in her life, she was rising. The hall seemed to stop breathing. Every candle flame flickered. Every servant froze behind the doors. Lady Serana's lips parted, but no sound came. Her daughter was standing, weak and shaking, but standing. Lyra's face shone with both pain and joy. "Mother," she gasped, her voice trembling. "I'm standing." The proud Lady Serana, who had faced nobles, who had crushed rivals with a glance, felt her knees weaken. Her heart roared with emotions she could not name. She stepped forward, her hands lifting as if to reach her daughter, but she stopped halfway. Fear held her. What if it broke? What if it was only a moment? What if hope shattered again? Elias steadied the girl gently. His calm never broke. Do not fear the fall, he whispered. Fear only the chains that keep you from trying. The words struck Serana like lightning. For years she had chained her own heart, chained her daughter's hope with her pride. Now a human stranger spoke truth she had buried. Lyra's knees buckled. She fell back into her chair, panting but smiling. Her hands still gripped Elias's tightly. I did it, she whispered through heavy breaths. I stood. Serana's lips trembled. She wanted to shout her joy, to weep, but her pride forced her face to remain still. Yet her eyes betrayed her, a single tear slipping free before she could stop it. Elias looked at the girl and then at the mother. His eyes were calm but deep. This is only the first step, he said. More will come, if you have the courage to let them. The Lady of the Hill said nothing. Her pride wrapped around her like armor, but inside her heart shook like glass ready to break. She turned sharply, hiding her face in the shadow of the balcony door, but her daughter's voice followed her, filled with hope, stronger than gold. Mother, I can stand. Those words echoed through the silent mansion, louder than any music, more powerful than any jewel. The mansion that had lived in silence for years now carried the sound of a miracle. The mansion was no longer the same after that night. Once filled with silence and whispers, it now carried a strange energy. Every servant who had seen the girl stand told another in secret. Soon the story spread beyond the walls. The lady's daughter has moved. She stood with the help of a human. The city below buzzed with the rumor, though none dared speak it too loud. Inside the high walls, life began to change. Lyra woke each morning with a smile, her small hands eager to hold. Elias's rough palm again, he taught her with patience, not rushing, not demanding, only guiding. Sometimes he used games, asking her to reach for small stones on the floor. Sometimes he asked her to push against his hands with her legs. At first her movements were shaky, weak as a trembling flame, but with each day they grew, clearer, stronger. Lady Serana watched from a distance. She pretended her duties kept her busy, but in truth she could not stay away. She found herself standing at the edge of the hall, her proud mask hiding her storming heart. Every twitch of her daughter's foot, every wobbling step felt like fire burning through her chest. The servants no longer whispered curses. They watched in awe. Some even began to smile when Lyra laughed. The mansion that had once been heavy with sadness now heard the sound of joy. Lyra's laughter, light and pure, echoed through the marble halls. It was a sound Serana had nearly forgotten, and now it returned every day. Elias never spoke of magic, never claimed power. He spoke only of patience, of trying again, of never giving up. His words were simple, but to Lyra they were brighter than jewels, and to Serana, though she refused to admit it, they were heavier than gold. One evening after days of training, Elias held out both hands to the girl. One step, he said gently. Only one. Do not think of two. Do not think of falling. Just think of the ground waiting for you. Lyra nodded. Her eyes shone with determination. Her legs shook, but she pushed herself up. Elias steadied her but did not carry her weight. Slowly, painfully, her foot lifted, her body leaned forward, and then her heel touched the floor again. She had taken her first step. The hall erupted. With gasps, a few servants even cried out. Lady Serana's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes widened as if she had seen the impossible. Her daughter, her precious child, was walking. Lyra's face lit with joy. I did it, she whispered. I took a step. Elias's calm voice answered, and tomorrow, you will take another. Tears filled the girl's eyes, but she was smiling. Her hands shook as she gripped Elias's arms. Her legs quivered, but she stood taller than ever before. For her, it was more than just a step. It was freedom. That night, Lady Serana stood by her daughter's bed. She watched the girl sleep peacefully, her lips curved in a smile. Serana reached down and brushed a strand of silver hair from her forehead. Her heart ached, she whispered, "You are stronger than I ever believed." For the first time in many years, Serana felt powerless in a way she did not hate. She realized all her wealth, all her jewels, all her pride could never have given this gift. Yet one human stranger, with empty hands, had done it. The days passed, and each day brought more progress. Lyra took 2 steps, then 3. She stumbled often, falling into Elias's arms, but he never scolded her, only lifted her and said, "Again." Her laughter filled the air, and each time she rose, her spirit shone brighter. The servants began to change too. They no longer looked at Lyra as cursed, they began to bow with respect. Some even whispered prayers of thanks as they passed her chamber. The mansion that had been heavy with hopelessness now felt alive again, but, for Lady Serana, hope was a dangerous flame. Each step her daughter took lit her pride and fear at the same time. She wanted to believe, yet part of her feared it might all end suddenly. What if the girl's strength broke? What if this miracle faded? Could she survive such heartbreak again? One afternoon, Serana stood behind a pillar watching quietly. Elias guided Lyra across the hall. Each step was shaky but real, and then it happened. Lyra stumbled, her legs failing. She fell hard to the floor, gasping in pain. Serana's heart shattered. She rushed forward, her pride forgotten. "Enough!" she cried, her voice trembling. "No more, she will hurt herself, I will not allow this." But before she could lift her daughter, Elias placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice calm but firm. "Do not take this from her, lady. A fall is not the end. It is the beginning, let her rise on her own." Serana froze. Her instinct as a mother screamed to protect, to shield. But her daughter pushed against the floor, her small arms trembling. She rose back to her knees, her face wet with tears but shining with determination. She looked up at her mother. "Please let me try." Serana's lips parted, her voice broke into silence. She looked at her daughter, no longer fragile, no longer cursed, but strong, stronger than herself. Slowly she nodded, her tears finally falling, and so step by step, stumble by stumble, the girl continued. Her laughter and tears blended together, filling the mansion with a light no jewel could ever match. The night was quiet. The twin moons shone above the city. Their silver light poured through the tall windows of the mansion. Lady Serana stood in the shadows of the hall watching her daughter Lyra take another shaky step. Elias was beside her, his hand close but not holding. His voice calm, steady, guiding her like a lantern in the dark. Lyra's legs trembled, but she moved forward one step then another. Each time she stumbled, she caught herself. Each time she wavered, Elias's voice pulled her back. "Again, little one. Again." Serana's chest ached. Her eyes followed every movement. Her pride, once hard as stone, had melted into something she did not recognize. She had faced nobles, rulers, even enemies, and never bent. But here, watching her daughter rise from the ground, she felt her knees weaken. Lyra gasped with effort, her face wet with sweat. Her thin arms shook, but her eyes burned with fire. She turned toward her mother. "Mother, look at me," she cried. Her voice was trembling but full of joy. "I'm walking." Serana's hand flew to her lips. For a moment she could not breathe. She felt as if the world had stopped. Her daughter, who for years had been bound to her chair, now moved across the marble floor one step at a time. Her feet tapped softly against the stone, louder than drums. A tear slid down Serana's cheek before she could stop it. She quickly wiped it away, but more followed. She fell to her knees, her golden robe pooling around her like spilled sunlight. Pride no longer mattered. Wealth no longer mattered. The only thing before her was her child. "Lyra," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My daughter, you are walking." The servants hiding behind the doors gasped at the sight. Their lady, always proud and cold, now knelt on the floor, her tears falling freely. They had never seen her bow to anyone, not even kings, but here she bowed before her daughter's strength. Lyra stumbled again, her legs buckled, and she fell into Elias's arms. He caught her gently, steadying her, but he did not lift her fully. Instead, he guided her hands back to her mother's. "She needs you now," he said softly. Serana reached out, her fingers trembling. She took her daughter's small hands into her own. Her jewels clinked softly, but they felt worthless compared to that fragile touch. Her daughter's hands were warm, alive, strong with new hope. Together, slowly, Lyra lifted herself again. Her knees bent, her body rose. Serana guided her, tears blurring her vision. And then, step by step, Lyra moved forward, not leaning on Elias but on her mother. The hall filled with the sound of her small footsteps, uneven but real. The Lady of the Hill, once untouchable, now held her daughter's hands like a lifeline. Her tears fell onto the marble floor, each drop a memory of years of pain, each drop washed away by this miracle. "You are stronger than all the riches I own," Serana whispered, her voice trembling with every word. "You are greater than every jewel, greater than every crown, my child. You are my treasure." Lyra smiled through her own tears. "I only needed a chance," she whispered back. Elias stepped back, silent, his eyes calm but proud. He watched as mother and daughter moved together. Across the hall, it was no longer about healing, no longer about proving power. It was about love, trust, and the breaking of chains unseen. When they finally stopped, Lyra collapsed into her mother's embrace. Serana wrapped her arms tightly around her, pressing her face into her daughter's hair. She sobbed openly, no longer the proud lady of the hill, but only a mother who had found hope again. The servants behind the doors wept too. Their whispers were prayers. Their hearts bowed not to wealth, but to the miracle before their eyes. For years they had served in silence. Now they served in awe. As the night deepened, Serana carried her daughter back to her chamber, not with her arms but by walking slowly beside her, step by trembling step. Each movement felt like a blessing. Each breath felt like life returned. Later, when Lyra slept, peacefully, Serana sat by her bed. She brushed the girl's hair gently, her heart still shook with emotions she could not name. She looked at Elias, who stood quietly by the window, his figure calm in the moonlight. "Why do you help us?" she asked, her voice raw. "You ask for no gold, no power, nothing. Why?" Elias looked at her, his eyes deep and steady. "Because sometimes the smallest step is worth more than all the treasures in the world." Serana's tears fell again. She lowered her head, whispering, "I was blind. My pride chained me, but you freed us both." For the first time, she felt lighter. Not because of her wealth, not because of her rank, but because she had seen her daughter walk. Her heart, once locked in silence, now beat with hope. The sun rose over the alien city, casting golden light across the silver mansion. The tall towers glowed, the courtyard sparkled. But inside the great hall, a different light was shining. It was the light of hope, the light of footsteps that had never been heard before. Lyra stood in the center of the hall, her small hands clutching her mother's fingers. Her legs trembled, but she was standing on her own. Her eyes sparkled like stars. She had taken steps before, but now she was ready to show the world. "Lady." Serana stood beside her, her face no longer cold. Her pride was still there, but it had changed. It was no longer the pride of jewels or status. It was the pride of a mother whose daughter had done the impossible. The great doors opened and servants filled the hall. Behind them, nobles and curious citizens gathered. The rumor of the miracle had spread too far to be contained. The lady had tried to silence it, but hope had wings, and now the whole city had come to see. Whispers filled the air. "It cannot be true. The cursed child walking? Impossible." The crowd pressed forward, their eyes wide with doubt and wonder. Elias stood quietly at the side. He said nothing, asked for nothing. His calm eyes watched Lyra with quiet faith. He knew this was her moment, not his. Lady Serana lifted her chin. Her voice carried across the hall. "You came to see my daughter," she said firmly. "Then you shall see her strength." The hall fell silent. All eyes turned to the small girl with trembling legs. Lyra looked at her mother, fear in her eyes. But Serana squeezed her hands, whispering softly, "You are stronger than all of them, my child. Show them." Elias's voice followed, steady and warm. "One step at a time, little one. One step." Lyra took a deep breath. She lifted her foot and moved it forward. The sound of her heel tapping the marble echoed through the chamber. The crowd gasped. Her other foot followed, slow but steady. Step by step, she walked, her knees bent, her body wavered. But she did not fall. Her mother guided her gently, never lifting her, only steadying, and each step felt like thunder in the silent hall. The nobles whispered in shock. The servants wept openly. The people who once called her cursed now watched with awe. The girl who had never walked was now crossing the hall in front of them. When she reached the middle, she stopped. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. Her eyes glistened. She looked at Elias, then at her mother. "I am walking," she whispered. Lady Serana's tears fell freely. She did not hide them. Not before her people, not before anyone. She raised her daughter's hand high, her voice breaking. "She walks not by wealth, not by gold, but by hope." The hall erupted with cries. Some cheered, some fell to their knees. The nobles who once mocked the lady now lowered their heads. The servants bowed deeper than ever. For the first time they bowed not to riches but to love. Elias remained silent. His heart was calm. He had done what he came to do, not for praise, not for gold, but for the truth that one step could change a life. Later that night, when the crowds had gone, Serana stood by the balcony, the stars shining above her. She looked at Elias, who was preparing to leave quietly. "You cannot leave," she said, her voice still carrying strength, though softened by gratitude. "You gave me what no treasure could. You gave me my daughters, steps. My life owes you more than I can repay." Elias shook his head. "I need no payment, lady. What I gave was not mine to keep. It was hers. The steps were always hers. I only helped her find them." Serana's lips trembled. She lowered her eyes, whispering, "All my riches could not buy this gift. All my power could not command it. Yet you, a man with nothing, gave me everything." She turned back to the hall, where her daughter's laughter now rang. The mansion, that had once been silent, was alive. The heavy weight of years had lifted, replaced by light, by joy. Serana placed her hand on her chest, feeling her heart. "More than wealth," she whispered to herself. "More than gold. More than pride. A human heart gave me this." Elias smiled faintly. He looked one last time at the girl who now took slow, playful steps across the floor. Her laughter filled the air like music. Then he bowed slightly to the lady and turned toward the doors. Serana watched him leave. Her eyes filled with respect. She had never bowed to anyone, but in her heart she bowed to him. For in the end, she understood the truth. Wealth could build walls, but only love and courage could set a soul free. The story of the lady's daughter spread far beyond the city, across planets, across stars. Some called it a miracle, some called it madness. But those who had seen it knew the truth. It was not gold or power, but a single human hand that had lifted the child. And in the silent nights of the mansion, Lady Serana often whispered to herself, "More than wealth, more than pride, more than all treasures. I found hope. I found life. Because of him."